Have you ever experienced a moment that completely transformed your life? A split second when everything you thought you knew was turned upside down? If you're listening to this right now, I need you to stop whatever you're doing and pay attention, because what I'm about to share might just change the way you see relationships forever. This is a story about betrayal, forgiveness, and finding strength in the most unexpected places. My name is Nathan Miller, and until 3 years ago, I lived what most people would call a picture-perfect life in the small town of Millfield, Connecticut. It's one of those places where everyone knows your name, your business, and probably what you had for dinner last night. I'd lived there my entire 42 years, following in my father's footsteps by taking over the family hardware store that had been serving our community for generations. I was married to my high school sweetheart Olivia for 20 years. We had 2 beautiful children, our daughter Emma, who was 19 and attending college in Boston, and our son Jack, who was 16 and the star quarterback of our high school football team. From the outside looking in, we were the epitome of the American dream, a successful local business, a beautiful colonial home with a white picket fence, and a family that volunteered at community events and attended church every Sunday. Millfield is the kind of town where traditions matter more than anything else. The annual Fall Festival, the 4th of July parade, the Christmas tree lighting ceremony, these events are the backbone of our community. And my family was always at the center of it all. Olivia chaired the town's charity committee. I was president of the Chamber of Commerce. We were respected, admired, and I thought truly happy. But what I've learned is that sometimes the most devastating storms begin with nothing more than a single dark cloud on an otherwise perfect day. For me, that cloud appeared during last year's Fall Festival. It was a crisp October afternoon, the kind that paints the New England landscape in brilliant shades of red and gold. The entire town had gathered in the square as they did every year. Children were running between booths of homemade goods. Couples were strolling hand in hand, and the air was filled with the scent of apple cider and cinnamon. I was manning the hardware store's booth, where we were demonstrating our new line of eco-friendly home improvement products. It was a busy day, and I was caught up in conversations with customers and neighbors. Olivia had been helping earlier, but mentioned she needed to check on the charity auction preparations. I thought nothing of it. After all, she coordinated the event every year, and it was always a huge success. As the afternoon wore on, I found myself with a rare moment of quiet. I decided to take a quick break and bring Olivia a cup of her favorite apple cider. I made my way through the crowd toward the town hall where the auction items were being displayed. Several volunteers were bustling around, arranging beautiful gift baskets and signing in last-minute donations, but Olivia wasn't among them. "Have you seen my wife?" I asked Sarah Johnson, who had been working alongside Olivia for years. Sarah's expression changed instantly, just for a split second, but long enough for me to catch it. It was a look of pity mixed with embarrassment. "I think she said something about checking the sound system in the gazebo," she replied, her eyes not quite meeting mine. I thanked her and headed toward the white gazebo at the edge of the town square. It was partially hidden by a cluster of maple trees, their leaves creating a canopy of autumn colors. As I approached, I heard low voices. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but something made me slow my pace and move quietly. Through the lattice of the gazebo, I could see Olivia standing much too close to a man. It took me a moment to recognize him as David Anderson, the town's newest resident who had moved to Millfield just 6 months ago to take over as principal at the high school where our son attended. David was younger than me by at least 5 years, with the kind of confident good looks that had made him instantly popular in town, especially among the single women in the PTA. But Olivia wasn't single. She was my wife of 20 years, and yet there she was, her hand resting on his chest, looking up at him with an expression I hadn't seen directed at me in a very long time. "We can't keep doing this," I heard her whisper. "Nathan suspects something." David's hand moved to her face, his thumb gently stroking her cheek. "You can't stay in a marriage just for appearances, Leave. You deserve to be happy." "It's not that simple," she replied. "You don't understand what it's like in a town like this. Everything I've built, my reputation, the children are practically grown," David interrupted. "Emma's in college and Jack will be leaving next year. When will it be your turn to live the life you want?" I stood frozen, the cup of cider growing cold in my hand as my entire world collapsed around me. 20 years of marriage, countless memories, the life we had built together. All of it suddenly felt like an elaborate lie. I wanted to rush forward, to confront them both, to demand answers. But instead, I backed away quietly, my heart pounding so loudly in my chest that I was sure they would hear it. The rest of that day passed in a blur. I returned to my booth, mechanically interacting with customers, my mind replaying what I had witnessed over and over again. How long had this been going on? Had everyone in town known except me? Had I been blind or simply unwilling to see the truth? That evening, as Olivia and I moved around our kitchen in a familiar dance of dinner preparation, I searched her face for signs of guilt or remorse. But she was the same as always, efficient, pleasant, occasionally touching my arm as she reached past me for a spice or utensil. It was as if the woman I had seen in the gazebo was a completely different person from the one standing before me now. "The auction was a huge success," she said, chopping vegetables with practiced precision. "We raised nearly $7,000 for the community center renovation." "That's wonderful," I replied, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. "You've always had a talent for bringing people together." She smiled, completely unaware that I knew her secret. "It's a team effort. The whole town really came through this year." I wanted to ask her then, to confront her with what I had seen and heard. But Jack walked in, dropping his football gear by the door and asking what was for dinner, and the moment passed. And in truth, I wasn't ready. I needed time to process, to decide what this meant for our future, for our family. For the next 2 weeks, I lived in a state of constant surveillance, watching my wife for clues, analyzing our past for signs I might have missed. I checked her phone when she was in the shower, looked through her emails when she left her laptop open, even followed her once when she said she was going to a committee meeting. Each discovery was another knife in my heart. Secret text messages, mysterious hour-long errands, and committee meetings that either didn't exist or ended much earlier than her return home. The affair had been going on for nearly 4 months, since shortly after David had arrived in town. What had started as innocent collaboration on school fundraisers had apparently evolved into something much more intimate. From what I could piece together, they hadn't yet crossed the final line into physical infidelity, but they were teetering on the edge, held back only by Olivia's concerns about her reputation in town and the impact on our children. I became a ghost in my own life, going through the motions at the store, at home, at community functions. People noticed the change in me, the dark circles under my eyes, my distracted responses, my sudden disinterest in town affairs. But in a community that valued appearances above all else, no one dared to ask directly what was wrong. No one except Robert Stevens, my closest friend since childhood, and the town's only attorney. We were having our weekly lunch at Carol's diner when he finally broke the unspoken rule. "Nate, you look like hell," he said bluntly, pushing aside his half-eaten burger. "Whatever it is, you need to talk to someone before it eats you alive." The concern in his eyes was genuine, and suddenly the weight of carrying this secret alone became too much to bear. The words tumbled out before I could stop them, the whole sordid story spilling across the Formica tabletop between us. Robert listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly troubled. When I finally fell silent, he leaned forward, his voice low. "I've heard rumors," he admitted reluctantly, but I didn't want to believe it. "Not Olivia. Rumors." My stomach twisted. "Who else knows?" "It's a small town, Nate. People talk. Nothing specific. Just whispers about Olivia and the new principal spending a lot of time together." I thought it was just the usual gossip mill working overtime. The realization that I might be the last to know, that people had been whispering behind my back, perhaps even pitying me, was almost more than I could bear. What are you going to do? Robert asked. I stared out the window at the town square, where generations of Millfield residents had gathered, celebrated, mourned, and built their lives together. My family had been a part of this community for over 100 years. The hardware store had survived 2 world wars, the Great Depression, and the arrival of big box stores. I'd always believed that our marriage was equally resilient. I don't know, I answered honestly. I can't just walk away from 20 years without trying to understand what went wrong, where I failed. This isn't your failure, Nate, Robert said firmly. Whatever issues you and Olivia might have, she made a choice. I nodded, but deep down, I couldn't help wondering what I had done, or not done, to drive my wife into another man's arms. That night, I lay awake beside Olivia, listening to her steady breathing, wondering how many nights she had lain awake thinking of him. In the darkness, I found the courage to finally speak the words that had been burning inside me. I know about you and David. Her breathing stopped. For a long moment, the only sound in our bedroom was the ticking of the antique clock that had been a wedding gift from her parents. What are you talking about? She finally whispered, but there was no conviction in her denial. Please don't insult me by lying, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. I saw you together at the fall festival. I've seen the texts. I know you've been meeting him while I'm at the store. Olivia sat up, switching on the bedside lamp. In its soft glow, I could see tears already forming in her eyes. Nathan, she began, then stopped, as if searching for words that wouldn't come. I never meant for this to happen. Does anyone ever? I asked, sitting up to face her. What I want to know is why. What did I do wrong? What does he give you that I don't? It's not about what you did wrong, she said, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. It's about what we stopped doing right. When was the last time we really talked, Nathan? Not about the kids or the store or town events, but about us, about our dreams, our feelings. The question caught me off guard. I tried to remember the last deep conversation we'd had, the last time we'd shared more than just the logistics of our daily lives. We've been together for so long, Olivia continued. Somewhere along the way, we stopped seeing each other. We became roles instead of people. The hardware store owner, the committee chairwoman, the parents, the perfect Millfield couple. But beneath all that, I started to disappear, and you didn't even notice. Her words stung because there was truth in them. Our marriage had become comfortable, predictable, perhaps even complacent. But was that justification for what she had done? And David noticed? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. He saw me, she said simply. Not as Nathan Miller's wife or Emma and Jack's mother, but as Olivia, a woman with her own thoughts, desires, and dreams that got left behind somewhere. And that's enough to throw away 20 years of marriage. To betray not just me, but our children, our life together. Nothing has been thrown away yet, she said. Nothing irreparable has happened. You mean you haven't slept with him? I asked bluntly. She flinched at my words, but held my gaze. No, I haven't, but emotionally. Emotionally, I've been closer to him these past few months than I've been to you in years. That admission hurt more than if she had confessed to a physical affair. The thought that she had shared her innermost thoughts and feelings with another man while becoming increasingly distant from me was a betrayal that cut to the core of our relationship. What do you want, Olivia? I asked, suddenly exhausted. Do you want to be with him? Is that why you're telling me all this? To prepare me for the end? She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers twisting the wedding ring she'd worn for 2 decades. I don't know what I want, she finally admitted. When I'm with David, everything seems so clear. He talks about us leaving Millfield together, starting fresh somewhere new. But then I come home, I look at the life we've built. I think about the scandal it would cause, how it would hurt the children, how people would talk. So you're staying with me because it's convenient, because you're afraid of what people will say. The realization was like a physical blow. That's not fair, she protested. Our history together means something to me. You mean something to me. I'm just confused. Well, I can't make this decision for you, I said, getting out of bed. But I won't be your safety net while you decide whether or not our marriage is worth saving. I grabbed my pillow and a blanket from the closet. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. Tomorrow, we need to decide where we go from here. That night was the longest of my life. I lay awake in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying our conversation, and wondering how we had reached this point. The next morning, I called Robert and asked him to cover for me at the store. Then I did something I had never done before. I left town without telling anyone where I was going. I drove for hours with no destination in mind, just needing to be away from Millfield, away from the prying eyes and whispered gossip, away from the house that no longer felt like home. Eventually, I found myself at a small coastal town in Rhode Island, checking into a modest motel with a view of the Atlantic Ocean. For 3 days, I walked the nearly deserted beaches, the October wind whipping around me as I tried to make sense of my life. Olivia called and texted repeatedly, her messages growing increasingly frantic, but I responded only once to let her know I was safe and needed time to think. On the 3rd day, as I sat watching the waves crash against the shore, my phone rang with a call from Emma. My heart sank. Had Olivia told our children about what was happening? "Dad!" Emma's voice was concerned. "Where are you? Mum's freaking out, and she won't tell me what's going on." "I'm just taking a few days to clear my head, sweetheart," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Everything's fine. Dad, I'm not 16 anymore. Something's obviously wrong. Jack called me yesterday saying you disappeared, and Mum's been crying. What's happening?" I closed my eyes, wishing I could shield my children from the mess their parents had created. But Emma was right. She wasn't a child anymore. "Your mother and I are going through some difficulties right now," I said carefully. "We need to figure some things out." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Is it because of her and Mr. Anderson?" The question knocked the breath from my lungs. "You know about that?" Emma's sigh was heavy with the maturity beyond her years. "Dad, I came home for a weekend last month and saw them together at Riverside Park. They didn't see me, but it was pretty obvious something was going on. I confronted Mum about it, and she swore it wasn't what it looked like, that they were just friends working on school fundraising stuff. My daughter had known before me, had suspected, had even confronted Olivia, and had been lied to as well. The knowledge added another layer of betrayal. "I'm sorry you got caught in the middle of this, Emma. I'm more worried about you, Dad. Are you okay?" "Really? Was I okay? I honestly didn't know." "I'm working on it," I said finally. "I just needed some space to think." "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" Her voice had suddenly become smaller, reminding me of the little girl who used to climb into my lap for bedtime stories. "I don't know yet, honey. That depends on a lot of things. Jack doesn't know," she said after a moment. "At least, I don't think he does. He just thinks you're on some business trip. Let's keep it that way for now, okay? At least until your mother and I have figured things out." After promising Emma I would return home soon, I ended the call and stared out at the horizon. The conversation had clarified something for me. Regardless of what happened between Olivia and me, we needed to handle this in a way that would cause the least pain to our children. They deserved better than to be collateral damage in their parents' failing marriage. The next morning, I checked out of the motel and began the drive back to Millfield. As I crossed the town limits, I was struck by how unchanged everything looked. The same storefronts, the same town square, the same people going about their daily routines. It was as if the town existed in a bubble, impervious to the turmoil in my life. When I pulled into our driveway, Olivia's car was there. It was the middle of a weekday, and she should have been at her part-time job at the library. I found her sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes red and swollen from crying, a cup of untouched tea in front of her. She looked up when I entered, relief washing over her face. "You came back." "Of course I came back," I said, setting my keys on the counter. "This is my home." "Nathan, I am so sorry," she began, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I've been such a fool. While you were gone, I kept thinking about everything we've built together, everything we stand to lose." I sat down across from her, feeling strangely detached. "And what conclusion did you reach?" "I ended things with David," she said. "Completely. I told him I made a terrible mistake, that my place is here with you and our family. I studied her face, searching for the truth behind her words. Did you end it because you love me, or because you're afraid of becoming the subject of town gossip? That's not fair, she protested. Maybe not, but it's a valid question. I need to know if you're choosing our marriage because you want it, or because it's the safer option. She reached across the table for my hand, but I kept it firmly in my lap. I do love you, Nathan. Maybe I lost sight of that for a while, but these past few days without you, I realized how much I stand to lose. What about what you said before, about feeling invisible, about us not really seeing each other anymore? Those issues don't just disappear because you ended things with David. Olivia nodded slowly. I know. We have a lot of work to do, but I want to try, if you'll give us another chance. I had spent the past 3 days wrestling with this very question. Could I forgive her? Could we rebuild what had been broken? Or would I always be looking over my shoulder, wondering if history would repeat itself? I think we should see a marriage counselor, I said finally. Someone out of town, where we can speak freely without worrying about running into them at the grocery store the next day. Relief flooded her face. Yes, of course. Anything you want. And I think we should tell Jack together what's been going on. Not the details, but enough so that he understands why things might be tense for a while. Emma already knows more than she should. Olivia paled. Emma knows how? She saw you with David last month. She even confronted you about it, and you lied to her. Shame clouded Olivia's features. I didn't know what to say. I was scared and confused. Well, now we both need to be parents first and put our children's well-being ahead of our own drama. Can you do that? She nodded, wiping away tears. Yes, of course. That evening we sat Jack down and explained in careful terms that we were going through a rough patch in our marriage and would be seeing a counselor to work things out. To his credit, our son listened quietly, asked a few questions, and then surprised us both with his maturity. I just want you both to be happy, he said, and I want our family to stay together, but not if you're miserable. The following week, we had our first appointment with Dr. Eleanor Reynolds, a marriage counselor in Hartford. For 2 hours, we laid bare the issues in our marriage, the growing distance between us, the unspoken resentments, the ways in which we had both taken each other for granted. Olivia spoke of feeling invisible and unfulfilled, while I admitted to becoming so consumed with the hardware store and living up to my father's legacy that I had neglected our emotional connection. It was painful, raw, and exhausting, but as we drove back to Millfield in silence, I felt something I hadn't expected, a small glimmer of hope. Over the next several months, we continued our weekly sessions with Dr. Reynolds. We learned to communicate in ways we hadn't for years, to listen without becoming defensive, to express needs and desires we had long suppressed. At home, we instituted date nights where town gossip and children's activities were off-limits as conversation topics. Instead, we rediscovered each other as individuals beyond our roles as Millfield's model couple. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks and arguments, moments when the pain of betrayal would resurface unexpectedly, sparking fresh anger and hurt. The first time I saw David Anderson at a school function, the urge to confront him physically was nearly overwhelming. But for the sake of our son and our own dignity, I maintained my composure, even as whispers followed us around the gymnasium. The town, of course, had pieced together enough of the story to form their own conclusions. Some friends drifted away, uncomfortable with the messy reality beneath our previously perfect facade. Others surprised me with their steadfast support and discretion. Robert and his wife, Claire, became our strongest allies, inviting us to dinner parties where we could relax without feeling like we were under a microscope. Sarah Johnson, who had seen Olivia and David together numerous times, made a point of publicly including Olivia in community events, signaling to the town's gossips that she stood by her friend despite her mistakes. As for David Anderson, he remained in his position as principal for the remainder of the school year, but announced his resignation that spring, citing a desire to move closer to family in Seattle. The day after graduation, he left Millfield without fanfare, and the town gradually found new subjects for their whispered conversations. 1 year after the fall festival that had changed everything, Olivia and I stood in our kitchen, preparing for the annual charity auction she still chaired. The past 12 months had been a journey through pain, forgiveness, and rediscovery. Our marriage was different now, more honest, more intentional, sometimes more fragile, but in many ways stronger for having been tested. "Are you ready for this?" I asked, adjusting my tie. It would be our first major public event since the rumors had reached their peak. Olivia smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes in a way I had come to appreciate anew. "As ready as I'll ever be. We've faced worse than a few curious stares." As we walked toward the town hall, hand in hand, I realized something profound. The perfect marriage I thought we had before had been largely a performance, for the town, for our children, perhaps even for ourselves. What we were building now was messier, more difficult, but infinitely more real. The gazebo, where I had first glimpsed Olivia with David, stood at the edge of the square, decorated with autumn flowers for the festival. As we passed it, Olivia squeezed my hand. "I'm so sorry for the pain I caused," she said softly. "Not for the first time." "If I could go back—" "We can't go back," I interrupted gently. "We can only go forward, and that's what we're doing." She nodded, blinking back tears. "I love you, Nathan. Not because it's convenient or expected, but because I choose to every day." "I love you too," I replied, and in that moment I meant it completely. As we entered the town hall, heads turned in our direction. Some expressions were warm and welcoming, others contained lingering judgment or curiosity. But for the first time, I found that I didn't care what anyone in Millfield thought of us.